Welcome back to Zero Entry. This is episode 4. We're sort of creating the overarching narrative arc. Episode 1, just to remind you, is where I'm forecasting that we're moving into a synchronized crisis in the mining industry over the next few years. Episode 2 is where software eats mining, is that all the tech already exists. And episode 3 is an interview with Gavin Yeates, where we look anecdotally at two very large change projects, one which succeeded and one which failed, that were pretty identical, and why it failed in one case and succeeded in another. And this episode builds from that. I'm going to start with the rate of failure. Now, it's not going to take you long searching on the web till you find an article like this one here I'm showing you on the screen. Basically, the majority of transformation or innovation projects fail. Okay, that's really not going to surprise anyone. And generally, the literature you find will say, a large proportion will fail. And certainly, that's my observation. Okay, so over a long career, you can see most things fail. What, though, they mainly contend is that the cause of the failure is a failure of persuasion, that you didn't do all the right things to persuade your people to make the change. And this is where I disagree. I believe that what most of these guys are doing, if you go to the McKinsey and stuff, is the proposition is that most projects fail. It's all about the humans, not the technology. I agree with that. You're not competent to deal with this situation because it's kind of unique. We've done this many times before, and hire us and we'll charge you lots of fees and your project will be a success. That's the basic value proposition. And then they'll use some kind of step-by-step process. Probably the one that's most common, most people know about, if you've done anything in this area, would be Kotter's 8 steps in change management theory. They'll have some variant of this, and you follow my step-by-step process. This will persuade your people that they should all do these things, and your project will be a success. Well, if that was true, then there'd be a hell of a lot more successful projects than what you see today. I mean, this has been around for decades. So come on, this is not going to work. Instead, what I'm going to contend is that the primary driver of incentives to succeed or fail is external forces. It's the situation that you find yourself in. Kind of like this magnet and the iron filings. The external force is driving the alignment of behaviors. And look, if the alignment of incentives is towards success, then by all means, processes like Kotter's will certainly, add to your success or add to your probability of success. But if your incentives are aligned with failure, then all these management techniques do not have the sufficient power to overcome the fundamentals incentives of the organization at that time. So what I'm going to do is develop up a model of what is the external factor that drives this behavior to adopt or not adopt a innovation change. And I'll start with a very simple model. So I have a model for innovation projects, and that is to think of an innovation project as an asymmetric bet. So let's break that down. First of all, it's a bet because you're putting money in or resources in, and you're expecting more money and resources out than you put in, and there's a chance you will not succeed. Ergo, it's a bet, like betting on horses, roulette, whatever. What's different about this bet is it's asymmetry, and by that, what I mean is that the payoff you get for this bet vastly exceeds what would be indicated by the risk of failure. So even if the risk of failure is high, the payoff multiple is so much higher that it creates an asymmetry. Let me illustrate. We have a simple project we're about to commence. And in this case, we're going to invest $1 million into our innovation projects. Now, what we expect out of it, or what we're going to get should we succeed, is $100 million. So what we have is 100 to 1 payoff. Now our chance of success is only 1 in 10. So 90% failure rate. But remember, it's 100 to 1 payoff. So it's totally asymmetric. Now let's spin that wheel and see what happens. That's a fail and a loss of $1 million. But hold on 1 minute. 10% times $100 million, 10 million. 1 million turns to 10 million. Yeah, it kind of does on average. But you've got to play the game over and over again. So watch as we're doing it here. We play 1, we've got a 90% chance of failure, 2, and so on. And you see our chances of success keeps going up the more times we play. Holy crap! We've just found the answer to advancement. You're on your way to the C-suite. Ha! It's so easy. All we have to do is just do lots and lots of innovation projects, one after the other. Eventually the money will be rolling in and you're guaranteed for that, promotion. But wait, that's not what happens in the real world. Well, what's really going on here is that asymmetry drives certain behaviors. This was noted by Nassim Taleb in his book Fooled by Randomness, and those who don't know who Nassim is, he's the guy who came up with the whole concept of the black swan, which I'm sure you've heard about. Now in that book he said, there is asymmetry. Those who die do so very early in the game, while those who live go on living a very long time. When there is asymmetry in outcomes, the average survival has nothing to do with the median survival. So what that says here is just because on average you're going to win, which is good for the corporation, you're very likely to fail early on, and for your typical manager in your typical organization, that failure leads to loss of position, loss of job. So you don't get to survive long enough to get the average outcomes. And that's what's driving behavior. And that is the core of the incentive. And because it's so built into our DNA, this is evolutionary behavior, unless it's called out, we really don't see it. And hence we have all these management theories of, all we have to do is convince people. But really at the core, we're instinctually reacting to a set of circumstances. So let's say, okay, you're one of those who roll the dice anyway, because some people do. So let's say you roll the dice and you truly believe in your project and, you don't worry about the risk. Well, then politics comes in. And this has been observed for over 500 years ago by Machiavelli, where in his book The Prince, this is what he said. It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things. For the reformer has enemies in all those who profit by the old order, and only lukewarm defenders in those who would profit in the new order. This lukewarmness arising partially from the incredulity of mankind, who does not truly believe in anything new until they've actually experienced it. So no matter what you do in your management techniques or persuasion, it's never heartfeltly truly believed, and there's opportunity for your competitors for position within the organization to kill off the project and hopefully, in failure, remove you as a competitor. Okay? And in many respects, you kind of see that in the interview in episode 3, and if you listen to the story around the coal project, this is exactly what happened. So, where does that leave us? A little bit confused? Well, remember, early in the episode, I said that there's an external force that actually drives our innovation behaviors. And I kind of use the analogy of the magnet and the iron filings. So, okay, time to tell you what I think this is. And the way to get there is you're observing this external force at play right now in a stronger way than you've ever seen before, probably in your entire life. This is 2020. This is the year of the pandemic. And by Christmas, we'll have seen multiple vaccines developed and deployed. This is extraordinary. This is a massive alignment of behavior, effort, and resources. And it's all come together at an incredible pace. So, the mobilizing factor, the thing that has brought us all together, is crisis. Just so you know that I'm not just kind of pulling this stuff out of thin air, this effect of crisis driving innovation has been known for an incredibly long time. So we'll start recently. Rahm Emanuel, who was Chief of Staff of US President Obama as he was entering office during the GFC, where he said, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste." And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before. So there he acknowledges the fact that in steady state times, you can't really get things done, right? But the crisis comes and man, is that a moment to get things done. Let's go back to a bit of earlier history, maybe at the kind of dawn of sort of the modern new world, US and Australia and Canada, etc. At the dawn of those nations, where we have Samuel Johnson, where he said, "Depend on it, sir, when a man knows he's being hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully." Again, not so much around innovation, but the focus and effort that brings to bear when there's a crisis coming. But really, to nail it home, now I'm just going to go right back to the dawn of history, where we have the quote from Plato's Republic: "The true creator is necessity, who is the mother of our invention." So you can clearly see for a very long time it has been recognized by practitioners and philosophers and commentators, and it's just an observable fact of the world that crisis drives focus and innovation. So it's now taking me almost 15 minutes to get you to the fundamental thing or fundamental claim I'm making, and that is crisis equals innovate. No amount of goodwill or it's just the right thing to do gets you there. At the beginning of World War II, the United States was technologically inferior to both Germany and Japan. Pearl Harbor happened, and 4 years later they were creating atomic bombs. Crisis equals innovate. I'm also going to make the secondary claim. This one's a little bit weaker. I don't have a great level of evidence, and you can go back in history and see people talking about it. But I also believe this to be true, but I can be convinced otherwise, and that is the probability of success flips. That during a crisis, your likelihood of success is like 90% instead of 10%. And a corollary of that, therefore, is that the mostly projects that you see out there that are failures is because you're trying to prosecute an innovation during a period where there is no crisis. Okay, very controversial position to have. I know I'm going to get some pushback from this, So go ahead, lay into me in the comments below. I'm expecting it, happy to answer, happy to argue back, but that's the position I'm holding. So I'm going to wrap things up now, and this sort of ends the initial narrative arc of the 4 episodes of this channel, which is episode 1 is that we're heading into a crisis and it's going to be synchronized. Episode 2, all the technology is there, the change is kind of inevitable, and we're probably going to roughly halve our OPEX. Episode 3 is real life example of both success and failure in very similar projects, almost identical in fact. And then there's this episode which is talking to what is the fundamental driving force that actually makes it happen, which is crisis. Note the circular reference back to episode 1, and we're heading into a synchronous crisis. So the whole point of all of this is really to say, at the end of the day, I believe we're heading into probably some of the most massive changes we've ever seen in our industry in our lifetime. The rate of advancement is going to accelerate from here. The crisis that's coming, that's brewing, will drive that change, and we will see massive opportunity from the supplier side to match that pace of change that needs to happen, and careers within mining companies that will be built on really prosecuting that change. I look forward to working with both my colleagues in the supply industry and with miners going forward. This period coming forward should be a lot of fun. Future episodes will be mostly about, okay, here's my fundamental thesis, so what am I going to do about it? I could go and do episodes pontificating about what you should do, or what your supplier should do, or a miner should do, but I'm not going to do that, or at least I'm not going to do that initially. What I think is probably going to be more productive is talking to practitioners in the industry and kind of having those debates. You can push back on my fundamental claims, or you can accept my claims and we can just move into what we should do about it. So I look forward to those future episodes, and if you'd like to hear about them, please hit the subscribe and notification buttons. See you in the future. Bye.